Good morning, America. How are ya? Monday Morning Rail. I'm your native son. I'm the train they call the City of New Orleans. Hi, I'm Denny Jelsma, and I'm at the world-famous Jacksonville Terminal Railroad Museum in beautiful Jacksonville, Florida, where the sun always shines and running trains is always a pleasure and peace and harmony. Today is Monday, and you know what we do on Monday? You guessed it. It's show and tell. And show and tell starts right now. Well, show and tell is starting right now, and today I have a very, very exciting show. And it is featuring the CB&Q, the Burlington, the Q, one of its trains that a lot of people haven't heard of. It didn't even reach Zephyr status, but it was an extremely important train, and it ran for many, many years, and it was called the Lincon, Billings, Montana train. It was train number 42 and 43, and it made connections in Billings. They had a lot of head-in cars, came out of Seattle, some out of Montana at different points. They had two sleepers. One came out of Seattle, and another one came out of Billings, that originated in Billings. And then there was another sleeper that originated in Montana. And so these were three sleepers that they sold seats that were going to either Kansas City or St. Louis, or Omaha, and that. And you got to remember, in the 40s and the 50s, train travel was extremely popular. And this train left Lincon, Nebraska, and it went on the Alliance branch and went to Alliance, and then from Alliance it went up into Montana. And actually, the Burlington took a little corner of South Dakota, and there was a town that was maybe about 25 miles, and it was an angle at the extreme west part of South Dakota. But the Billings train was actually very patronized. It was very famous in that particular corridor, and it lasted way into the 60s, and then they started cutting back with some sleepers, and then they cut the diner off, and so on, as typically what happened. But I'm going to show you here. Well, actually, my model that I have here, I don't have all of it. It had typically four sleepers. They had it was mostly 10-2 heavyweights, although what I have here is a Denver Zephyr pool car, Silver Swan, and it roamed throughout the Midwest area on various trains. It was the number one assignment was the Denver Zephyr, but then it had 10-2s heavyweights. And this train, the south portion, originated in Billings and went to Alliance, Nebraska. That was always a big division point, and still is for the BNSF. And they had a diner. The diner ran all the way through to Kansas City, and so once again, Kansas City was a big crew change for Pullman employees, railroad employees, and you name it. And so the dining car and the Pullmans, when they got to Lincon, some went to Omaha and some went to Kansas City. And you had always had a diner on it. Typically it was the heavyweight diner. They had coaches. Some were lightweight streamlined coaches, and some were the heavyweights. But it had a lot of heavyweight cars, head-in cars, that it had a big mail contract, Railway Express, and so you could see all the head-in equipment. Typically, if you look in the various books that talk about train 42 and 43, the Billings train, and that's basically what they call it, the Billings train via Alliance. It had 13 to 15 cars, 6 to 7 head-in cars typically. Naturally, it always had an RPO, and it was pulled typically by 2 E7s. And you can see on these has the black stripes, which dates the era. For the Q fans, we know the difference between a red and a black stripe. And so this is in the 50s era. And this is the train that was really very well traveled for that section of the United States. You would think that there would be that much traffic, but it was a train that fed a lot of other trains. And so if you was in Billings, Montana, and you needed to go to St. Louis or you name it, Kansas City, or even into Texas, you would take this train and go. The changing point was in Lincon, Nebraska, where they went from Lincon. They went to Kansas City, and then some of the cars went on into Omaha, and some of the cars were put on the Nebraska Zephyr, typically the Nebraska Zephyr or the Coloradian. And so this is the exciting train of the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy. Train number 42 and 43, the Billings train. It never reached Zephyr status, but it was as well patronized as the name Zephyr trains. And that's the way it is. And beautiful Jacksonville, Florida, where the sun always shines and running trains is always a pleasure, at the beautiful Jacksonville Terminal Railroad Museum. And that's the way it is.